accomplish that goal.
Now, like when you used to set goals and, whatever these goals that you had written down for 7 years or whatever it was, did you come up with the plan? And did you have to have a way that they were strung together? Or were they just written goals?
Yeah, I came up with a plan. One of them I wanted to do my MBA, and so
Mm,
walking through the whole thing, like which are the best schools, what do you
yeah.
actually want to do your MBA in, how are you going to pay for it, like come up with the whole thing, and then just sort of like check the boxes, okay, as I accomplish each thing,
Yeah,
and
man.
and they're also in like chronological order, so this needs to happen before that, and then this, and then this.
So I really didn't think we would be talking about this, but just so you know, like my whole brand is goal setting. Here, hang on. And I carry with me what I call my dream machine. I carry it around with me. And
Dream machine.
yeah, and it's this. And this is something that I've been doing since, hang on, it's just some portfolio. Yeah, there's
Ooh.
nothing written on it, but this is also in a Google document. And it's something that I dust off and edit all the time, but definitely on a yearly basis, if not quarterly. Major attributes of a leader, things that mantras that I recite to myself, like one of my original visioning drawings I did with my wife, and then we get into my actual goal list, and my goal list has something like 250 items, and it doesn't change much other than the things I've accomplished, and I review it, and I go, oh man, I knocked that one thing out. I didn't even realize it. And then other things I might add a few things to it, but I carry that with me. And in fact, the yellow book right here over my shoulder,
Yeah.
that's my latest book, and that's my goal setting book called The Top 100. And the reason I ask about age is this: a lot of people from like mid 30s on that I talk to, and I mention goal setting, they kind of say something like what you're saying, like, I don't do that anymore. Or just this morning, my good friend James, he was saying, I'm not really sure what I want to set my goals for. And a lot of people are like, Grant, you need to get off the goal setting thing. Like people don't care that much about it anymore.
Mm.
And I was at the gym uh, Monday morning, and a gal there walks up and said, "Hey, I follow you on Instagram." I said, "Oh, okay." And she said, "I saw that you do some shows, but I saw that you might also train entrepreneurs." I said, "Yeah." I said, "What's your goals? New Year's. What's your dream?" And she said, "Well, I want to be an entrepreneur too." I said, "Oh, well, let's talk about that. What does that mean?" She said, "I don't even know." I said, "Well, how do you know you want to be an entrepreneur?" She said, "All I know is that I don't want to work for somebody else."
Okay.
And it dawned on me that my peers and contemporaries who I've been talking to about goals, mostly my professional life, they might be entering a season where goals are passe. They are blasé. Or I think we actually know now the level of work it takes to accomplish a goal. And so we
I'm with
we
you on
are
that.
cautious for the goals we set because we're trying to conserve bandwidth. But I said, who's pumped about this is there's new generations of 20 somethings all the time coming out
Mm. Yeah.
in the world who are lost and need goals. And so I think it's on me, not our generation, not you, not anybody, but I'm just personally convicted that I just need to still stay pumped for this dreaming young generation of people who were lost, but we got piss and vinegar and we want to take over the world. And that's goals. Goals are magic when you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
When you're in your 30s, it's like I knew what it took to get my MBA, son. And if I set a big goal now, oh dang, I'm kind of setting myself up for a lot of work that I'm not sure I want to do, man. That's
Yeah.
too funny.
I I'm with you on that. That part of the issue with setting a goal is that you
Yeah.
have to accomplish it. Because in your
Yes.
20s, the whole thing about goals is you set them so that you can practice accomplishing them, so that you
Yeah.
can get into that repetitive nature of coming up with an idea in your head and then performing all the tasks that it takes until you've been able to see it all the way through. But
Yeah,
as
man.
you get later in life, like each one of those ideas is something that you have to do. So yeah, like you want to do
You're
less
like,
of that stuff, not more.
yeah, like I want to clock out of work and and just debrief. But here's the question. and we can get on to crypto after this, but I find this to be more interesting to me than anything in the human experience. Is this does this we're teleological, meaning we're goal oriented. Even if we're like not doing big world changing goals, we're trying to get through our job or invest in crypto. Those are all goal oriented actions. And I guess my question is how do you stay motivated in a world where you're more selective about your goals?
Hmm. Well, well, let me ask you a question. Why is that something that you're thinking about? I'm trying to figure out like where the question is coming from.
Great question. And sidebar to everyone who's just now clocking in. I know this is not Crypto Bros, which gives us permission to talk about goals.
She too. What's
Olamude,
up, buddy?
yeah, she too. Good to see you, man. Jarrett's dialing in, and Jarrett is got the vid, and that doesn't mean he's got Ebola. It means he's resting up today, and he finally tested. He's taking care of his dad. Missed out on a great trip out of the country to stay home with his family, and then he got the vid. So good, well wishing to Jarrett. Jarrett says goals are huge. Those who don't set them don't achieve them. You fail at 100% of the goals you don't set, right? For that goal. And then see 36-year-olds with more regret than failures. I definitely have seen that as well. Now, Jay just asked the question, where's my question coming from about motivation? And it's this. I don't know a lot of actions for humans that actually motivate them to overcome significant challenges. I have worked as a coach, as a goal coach, a small business coach, a personal development coach for the last 20 years formally. And I have found that there's actually very few things that motivate people to take massive action for things they want, other than fear. Like pain, fear of pain is the number one motivator I've seen, but I don't
Yeah,
like using that as a tool.
I
Like
don't
I'm
either.
afraid,
No.
like we've joked about your papers in Canada, right? Getting your paperwork together or your
Yeah.
visa or whatever it is. And it's like, well, if I hired an immigration agent to knock on your door and harass you and say, I'm coming back next week if you don't have your paperwork, it's like, wait a minute. You'd go out there and do something, fear of pain.
Yeah.
Um, but we very rarely, and I don't think that's the most potent function. I think that an awe-inspiring, passion-inspiring vision is more important. So I guess I look around the world, the malaise of COVID and the pandemic, I don't see a lot of people who are radically motivated or inspired. And so I ask the question anytime I'm talking to someone about this, how do you stay motivated even when you're not writing goals that might be big or accomplishing? What is your source of motivation? Why continue in this life at all? Why seriously, I mean, people are down in the mouth enough, and people have these thoughts, but like what gets you out of bed when you don't have big goals in front of you?
I think it's the repetition of it. Having accomplished those goals earlier in your life, and understanding how it feels to do something good, to have an idea and see it all the way through to completion. It's that's what keeps me going. It's like repetition.
Interesting.
What's up, Brian?
Yeah. What's up, Brian? Brian says, hope you feel better soon. Jarrett, yeah, he should be back. Oh, and we do need to say this at the top of the hour and maybe at the bottom of the hour. The Not Crypto Bros are going to pause Saturday mornings because most of you lovely people are asleep. And we have a good time getting together, chatting and yammering, but we're going to realign on what we're doing for a second pillar of content. So just announcing that, we'll do other announcements on that. Let's talk a little bit about crypto since we're here. What's going on in the crypto space? What have you been seeing? Oh, there's Brian. And what are you making of this Genesis kind of pissing match with, or the Winklevoss twins pissing match with DCG? Did you actually read that article, Jay?
Yeah, I looked at that. That's pretty sad, right? I mean, they're saying that the Winklevoss twins are saying that DCG and Genesis are dragging their feet on this loan.
Yeah,
But it seemed like the whole reason that this has become a thing is because the DCG ended up losing a bunch of money in the whole FTX collapse.
sure.
And so I'm wondering how much of it is them dragging their feet just versus them just not having the collateral to actually pay off this $900 million loan. It's not a small amount either.
No, it's not a small amount. I did you see the response from the DCG guy, Barry
No,
Silbert?
what did he say?
So he responded almost immediately.
Oh,
So like I read a tweet from Cameron Winklevoss of his open letter, because he basically claimed in his open letter, we've been trying to get a hold of you and you're ignoring us. And the article went so far as to say Cameron Winklevoss even reached out on Christmas Day, and almost as if he was justified in not getting a response, justified in his anger for not getting a response. But I'm like, it's Christmas Day. You're not going to get a response from anybody for anything.
mhm.
But the world seems to be siding with Cameron Winklevoss, with the Winklevoss twins and Gemini, about this money that was borrowed. But Barry Sealbert responded in a tweet. Don't know if this is verified or not. He says, we did not borrow $1.6 billion from Genesis ever. We have never missed an interest payment to Genesis, which is our agreement. And we are current on all loans outstanding. And our next loan maturity is in May 2023. DCG has delivered to Genesis and your advisors a proposal back on December 29th, and you still haven't given us a response. So
Hmm.
basically, now that has to be verified. Like, these are all just claims. Cameron has claims and Barry has claims. But when I read that, and then they get into this little tweet battle. Well, Cameron's like, there you are pretending to be the good guy again. Like, then it just derails, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's really a pissing contest of like, well, where did you get 1.6 billion if not from us? And so like they get into that a little bit. But my point is, there's a phrase we use in negotiation: the first to the victim chair wins. Whoever claims they were a victim,
Yeah.
the law of primacy or whatever, tends to stick in people's minds.
Mhm.
So maybe they did lose money. Genesis lost money. Where's this going? Do you think? I mean, based on Barry's response, he says they're solvent. Why do we think they're insolvent? And why do we think Genesis might be insolvent as a result, other than the headlines?
They had loaned FTX money, right? DCG did.
Yeah, I think. Yes. Yes.
Right. And so they were actually one of the major claimants in the whole FTX debacle thing. And so
Mm,
it, if that's the case, then they don't have access to as much cash as they thought they
mm.
did a year ago or even a month ago.
Interesting. Interesting.
But
And so,
if what Barry is saying is right, then maybe it could be that okay, crypto's been bad for everyone, and everyone is sort of like calling in on some amount of those loans. It could be that
yes.
Gemini is saying, "Hey, we want to call this loan, or we want to at least renegotiate this loan so that we can get more money up front, and then just do something differently." And could be that Genesis is saying, like, nah, no, thank you. We don't want to change it. We already have this contract. We're good.
Well, all these people also answer to others, right? And my impression of some of this right off the bat was that Cameron has to has to have a public show that he's being assertive,
Mhm.
because his largest stakeholders are like, "Where you at, bro? Like, you got to be tough and you got to get this money.
Yeah,
We're not going to be everyone else's liquidity pool, right?"
but
And meanwhile, Barry Sealbert of DCG also answers to people. And so I guess my heart kind of goes out to Barry, because if what he is saying is accurate, he's already staring down the dragon with his stakeholders, and he doesn't need Cameron on top of this, like
mhm,
puffing up in public and being like,
yeah.
I know what you're owed. Why you gotta be like this? Um, and here's my question to you, as you've seen some of these things play out in some of your experience in finance. Though this might be a good play for Cameron to show that he's being tough on his creditors or his debtors,
Mhm.
couldn't this accelerate the fear and uncertainty, the
Yeah,
FUD,
absolutely. I'm with it.
for and accelerate DCG's demise,
Yeah,
and therefore,
and the larger market too. Yeah,
but then by proxy himself,
yeah.
like, because if they suddenly claim bankruptcy, But that's the other question is, would Gemini, is that a chess move where Gemini would say, I
It's a
want
bad
them to
chess
claim?
move.
What'd you say?
It's a bad chess move.
How so? What do you mean?
I mean, it feels like the Winklevoss twins are operating from point of weakness. Like they're coming about it from a defensive position.
Interesting.
Because if you owed me $900 million and that
Yeah.
$900 million didn't really bother me, like I could pull 900 million out of my account and cover that. And whenever you paid me, you paid me. If you didn't pay me, okay, no, doesn't matter. My company's still doing great.
Yeah.
Like I'm not talking about you on Twitter. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? There are no tweets about what's happening here. Like I'm I'm thinking about relationships, the people who work for you, who may eventually work for me, who may work for another company that I'm gonna do business with. Like, yeah, like the only reason I would talk about you owing me money is if I really needed that money.
Interesting. A point of weakness. And it doesn't seem smart because to me, there could be one chess move that Cameron Winklevoss is going for, and that is forcing the public markets to either pressure them to pony up whatever is owed or pressure them to fold and collapse. Either way, they could be thinking, well, it's a no lose situation for us. If they file bankruptcy, we can claim these losses on our books and move forward. We're sitting on a ton of cash, our own reserves, but we can do our own thing and we can move forward now. If they pay up, we win. If they close, we win. But
But they can they actually move forward? Because it's customer funds, right? It's not Gemini funds, it's customer funds that they've loaned out.
I guess I mean move forward with business as usual. Like paying, like I don't know, are funds frozen? I don't even know. That would be a whole nother level. But
Yeah,
um,
Genesis froze their funds. I don't
they
think
did.
Gemini did, but the funds that Gemini lent to Genesis or DCG is
Mm.
customer funds because it's all in that like staking thing.
Oh wow. So I guess yeah, move forward. So no, if DCG claims bankruptcy, doesn't reneges on the loans, Genesis can then claim, hey, we don't have the funds, and then lay those out on their own
Mhm.
liquidity. So here's my question. Is any of this covered by insurances at all?
Oh, I mean, if you have like trading insurance, maybe like day traders have insurance.
Yeah, because there are mechanisms for some like hedging. I mean, it doesn't cover all of someone's liquidity, but
Hmm.
in traditional markets, there's a healthy marketplace for some sort of trading insurance that makes up for some percentages of this stuff. Is it
Yeah.
your knowledge at all that this is going on with crypto in any way, DeFi in any way?
True. Insurance in crypto is something that's really new. I met a guy who was like basically trying to pioneer the concept like
Okay.
maybe 3 or 4 months ago. And at the
Mm-hmm.
time, there were no companies that were providing crypto insurance.
Mm, gotcha. So is this just going to end up as law? Well, and the tough thing about this is actually tough. I wonder if Cameron was also trying to be of service to his depositors in order to force a hand before Jan 1 so his depositors could at least write their losses off on taxes.
Could
But
be, yeah.
now it's been rolled forward. Realizing capital losses in 2022 is over, right? Or
Hmm.
is there a grace period to your knowledge? Is it kind of like IRAs where there's some sort of grace period where you can allocate so much of your losses to the previous year even after the first? Did you experience anything like that either in the islands or in Canada? Do you know anything about that?
No, I haven't heard about anything like that. I imagine it would all depend on the agreement, right? Like you could move the funds to the appropriate year, but if the agreement was made December,
Mm,
after December
yeah,
31st, can you put it back to an early date?
interesting. But here's the thing that's blowing my mind. This is not affecting the price in the markets at all yet.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Would it take, I guess it would take them actually shutting down. But what's your sense of it? Like, as I survey, like I had Coin Market Cap up and prep for the show today. I was looking at all the headlines. The headlines seem pretty scary. This Twitter battle seems pretty negative. It doesn't seem to be having a news effect. It sounds like some Adam County. What are we referring to, Jarrett? Are we referring to like the tax deferment? Like what are you referring to, man? Give us a reference there. Um, but I don't feel like there's gonna. I feel like the market has adapted to this degree of FUD. Do you see the market falling out? I mean, I know Jarrett's calling for like a $5,000 to $8,000 Bitcoin.
Mhm.
Do you foresee that?
Yeah, it probably gets worse. Right? I mean, the crypto markets aren't exactly aligned with TradFi, but I
Sure.
pay attention to a lot of TradFi news,
Okay.
and have been for like a lot of years. And most people who are commenting on TradFi developments in 2023 are indicating that it's only going to get worse. People are trying to figure out how do we get out of tech. Like what else could we possibly get into, because things don't look like they're going to be any better in 2023 than it was in 2022.
Interesting. And so you mentioned the tech thing. Are there any other examples like that of headlines you're seeing from TradFi?
Oh, I mean, airlines, obviously, like the whole airline industry. I'd be surprised if they make it through 2023.
What do you mean? Just the industry closes
Just the industries in general,
worse
like
than the beginning of the pandemic?
that whole thing with Southwest and the computer glitch and them
Yeah.
canceling all those flights. That's
Yeah.
happened 3 years in a row. It happened in
Oh,
2019 before the pandemic, the exact same thing where they had this computer error and they ended up canceling hundreds of flights. It happened last year in 2021 because we didn't fly in
interesting.
2020. So it happened in 2021. Same
Mm,
thing with the computer glitch and they canceled couple hundred flights. Then it
mm,
happened again this year. But here's what's happening is that these companies have been around for so long.
yeah.
The software and computing that they're using was literally invented when the companies were created, and they're still using the same piece of software. Like you talked about it in your episode with Jarrett when you were talking about your cousin and that travel. I forget what it's called, the travel
Saber.
software. Sable. Yeah. It's all the same. It's really old pieces of software.
I was
And
going to ask that.
you can think about it from this perspective. Like if you're in a like anybody who's ever been in a small company and trying to change the software that you use, like going from one project management system to another, it takes weeks, right? It's like it's really tough to move all that
Yeah.
data across and make sure that everything matches up. So now imagine if you're a billion-dollar company with thousands of employees and decades of data, and you're trying to figure out, okay, how do we take it from this system and put it there? It's almost impossible. They probably won't figure it out. And you're just going to continue to see
Interesting.
these types of developments happening year after year. In fact, the only way that companies like that even are even able to change their systems is they have to buy a new smaller company, and
Mm,
that company already has the new system, and all they
yeah.
do is take all their old stuff and put it into the new company, and the new company runs everything from no on.
Interesting. So do you foresee consolidations this year of airlines?
Probably more than likely, but it'll
Really?
still be kind of tough, right? Because the whole thing about airlines is that the airline itself isn't actually worth anything. Most airlines, the value it lies within the frequent flyer miles program.
What?
Yeah, because just because of how those programs work, because of the
Okay.
psychology of the program,
Uh-huh.
you end up spending more money per ticket when you're trying to accumulate miles than if you just bought the ticket last minute.
Interesting.
And
So
so
on the books,
all of their value is wrapped up in the program. If the
so it's
program
like a
didn't exist, they would be losing money.
so like yeah, like if someone had been if everyone were cashing in their points, they'd be in trouble. So it's like an asset on the books of sorts.
It's a huge asset. Yeah.
Interesting. Jarrett jumps in and says this is a Web 2 excuse from Southwest and all airlines. Vitalik and EF moved
Mhm.
Ethereum. I don't know who EF. Oh, Ethereum Foundation moved
Okay.
ETH from proof of work to proof of stake in real time. Let me tell you something, Jared. I admit that Ethereum is complex, but I don't know if you've seen how god awful old Saber is. Like from a coding language perspective, it's literally like translating everything from Japanese pinyin to uh like I don't even know, like English, but also making sure that all the data transfers accurately. It's a big jump. And I get like I will say this, credit to whatever Vitalik and Ethereum Foundation built with even the old proof of work. And then in the merge coming out with proof of stake, I grant them they did something phenomenal. But dude, South, this is a Web 2 excuse. I would agree with that. It is a Web 2 excuse, but that doesn't mean that is not a difficult transition. But you do make a really valid connection here. I wonder how easy this transition would be, or how different this sort of technological upgrade would be in a blockchain environment. But to transition from Web 2 to Web 3 is like transitioning. Did you ever see the Land of the Flats? Someone, it was like a video that explains the paradigm of 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions, and it's a great metaphor of like how paradigms are really difficult when you go from a 2-dimensional paradigm to a 3-dimensional paradigm. And they actually show you how to view the world from a 2-dimensional perspective, and how there's no way you can see 3 dimensions. You can't even see them. That's the difference on Web 2 to Web 3. So you're probably right, actually. They might have to simply purchase maybe a software company
Yeah.
that has some sort of blockchain technology in a Web3 space, and then just like migrate the data over time or instantly over that. And then Jarrett jumps in and says, airlines are dead companies.
Zombies.
Zombies. They're built off of leveraged debt and rarely turn a profit. They're able to pay back their if even they're able to pay back their loans, cover costs, and get people paid, but never in profits, which is interesting. Never in profits. I would say that their margins are narrower, but are we rightly comparing them to software companies like your example of Ethereum? A software company's margins by default are
Much,
significantly
yeah,
larger.
much larger.
Um, so airlines in general, maybe like comparing that industry to manufacturing. I wonder
Oh,
what the average margin is. Go ahead. What is your thought there?
I'd say in general, transportation companies have low margins, because even Uber,
Very narrow.
as much as the whole thing about Uber is like, oh, we got started and we don't have any employees, we don't own any cars. Their
Hmm.
margins still aren't like, it's not a company that makes a ton of profit.
Well, yeah, and I think a lot of our industries run on mega narrow industries. TradFi, a lot of Web 2 TradFi companies have mega narrow margins. And I think about this one anecdote I heard or was reading about, us studying the history of 2008 a little bit. One of the first non-finance companies that was in threat of folding was Caterpillar. So the construction company, the rental company for all the big bulldozers and all the big the yellow Tonka trunks. If you picture this, the Caterpillar, the company.
Hmm.
I found out that their payroll is so large that there's some accounting benefit to them to take out loans to pay payroll, because the way their contracts work on construction and leasing and rental, they might have been paid in full before, they might get paid in full 6 months from now, but the work being done has to be done on payroll now. So there's a whole secondary market for these payroll companies, for companies like Caterpillar. And so when Lehman Brothers and Neiman Marcus and all these, or Neiman Marcus, Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and all these companies were collapsing, and JP Morgan was in threat, part
Yeah.
of the next person to make their case was Caterpillar going, listen, we're closing if like today, if something isn't done. And they were one of the biggest talking heads. And when you
Hmm.
think about that, they like transport industry, manufacturing, their margins aren't narrow enough to really withstand that shock. They wouldn't have survived 2008 if it wasn't for federal intervention. Like,
Yeah.
and who knows what would have happened? I don't know. I mean, maybe someone like Jarrett thinks that should have happened. I'm on the fence. Well, that's a good question. Do you think it should have failed, or do you think the U.S. government should have stepped in?
It's tough to say, especially like in hindsight. Like while it's happening, I think everybody was like, yeah, just let it fail. But
At the time,
we
yeah.
at the time, but you've
Mhm.
seen what happens when you allow a company like that to fail. And so maybe there's like some other kind of option where it's not like this duality, where either it survives or it fails. Like possibly, yeah, and you saw a few instances of people trying to do this. Maybe there's a takeover, maybe there's a better company to handle that company's assets. There's somebody who understands how to operate in this industry a little better.
Mm. Jarrett says, so software companies can be in profit, and most and many of them are. Airlines are just held up by subsidized government funding. That would be interesting to know what percent that does make up. To your point, I think that there was, even when they came out with some of the funding changes they were making in 2008, there was like a 5-year limit to some of those laws, and it just kept getting extended since then. But then there was also certain requirements for them to purge X, Y, and Z, cut expenses. Like there was some accountability, some
Hmm.
initial peacocking of, well, if we do this, you're going to make these changes to your bookkeeping. But I think notoriously, nothing was changed. They kept operating because it was extended. So you're right. It's tough to say in hindsight,
Yeah.
because at the time I was a proponent of, we want the system to fail because, as Jarrett's pointing out, if these things are held together by subsidies, like, let it go. It needs a pruning, but then at the same time we clamor about, like, well, unemployment is at X, you know, and consumer confidence is low, and it's just like, do we actually want that? It's almost like, I don't have you been in a long-term relationship? I've been married now for 11 years. Yeah, have you been in a long-term relationship?
Not that long.
There's a point that you know your partner, and it's actually really funny, and you guys could be in a tiff about something, and you could, like, they could make a threat like, "Oh, I'm just gonna go to the beach. I'm gonna check out, or I'm gonna go stay with my mother, or I'm gonna go to the mountains." And they don't mean it. So you come in and say, "Oh yeah, well, go for it." And you know that they don't, and then you both kind of stop and know you're being ridiculous. Um, It's like that with some of these subsidies. It's like, we know the government's not going to stop the subsidies, so we can take a moral high ground and say it should just collapse.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, time out. I've been through enough recessions now, enough bubbles, that I saw my dad come home losing his job in the first bubble I can recall. I
Mm.
remember lines at the gas station when people were literally dickering, basically negotiating for gallons of gas,
Yeah.
and the terror and the fear of poverty that comes up in those moments. And it's like, it's easy to take a moral stance when you know it will never happen. That will actually let an industry fail. Can you recall a time when we actually let an industry fail?
When we let one fail, I mean, the American car market kind of failed for a little while. Like Detroit basically is like what, like 25% of its original size now as a result of what happened. But I think that the automotive industry, yeah, and you brought it up, is a really great example of what's happening right now. So you see, like you were saying, all of these requirements that needed to, and this
Mhm.
pontificating, all this stuff that needed to be made in airlines, and just wasn't done over the last
Yeah.
decade.
Yeah, yeah.
That the same thing was happening with the automotive industry. I don't know. I
Mm.
so that I grant you, this might be before your time. I think I'm assuming like the energy crisis in the 1970s.
Oh, yeah,
um
yeah, that was before me. Yeah, yeah.
Right? So, like, prior to the 1970s, America made vehicles got like 9 miles to the gallon or something like
Oh,
that. That's
yeah,
because,
yeah.
well,
We still
gas
drove those vehicles, yeah.
gas was like dirt cheap, and then you
Yeah,
had the oil
pennies.
crisis in the 70s, and the government intervened, and it was the same kind of thing where they said, hey, then 10 years from now, you're going to have to figure out how to get all of your vehicles to, I think it was 29 miles per gallon. And the car
Mm,
companies dragged their feet. Like 5 years later, they had only managed to go from 9 to 14. And by the time
interesting.
the deadline came, they hadn't figured it out. And so they ended up being in the same kind of trouble that they were initially, and they ended up having to like license engine technology from like Japanese and Korean car
Interesting.
manufacturers, so Honda and Toyota and so forth. So you see the same thing basically happening. The airlines aren't doing anything, and eventually there's going to be some kind of new travel company that they're going to need to license that technology from. Maybe it's going to end up being what's Elon Musk space company
Tesla.
called?
Oh, SpaceX.
SpaceX or Blue Origin or one of those. I mean those are the only other like major transportation companies I can think of. So maybe if
Mm.
we end up licensing tech from them, but who knows?
Jarrett jumps in here with America post World War II used to produce 50% of the world's goods.
Well,
Post World War II, i.e., Europe was in ruins. So America has essentially let production and manufacturing dwindle. It wasn't overnight, but in hindsight, it might feel like it. That's true.
I didn't know
It
it
might.
was 50%. Wow, that
Well, I didn't know it was that high either. That's nuts. But if you think about it, post World War II, Japan was not producing.
yeah.
I don't know what China was doing.
It was
Europe,
still it was still like relatively small back then, right?
yeah, and he's right about Europe. Europe was in ruins, and we had to come up with a whole financing package for that. So essentially, America let production and manufacturing dwindle. That's China was still in isolationism. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. It wasn't it. Oh my gosh. Nixon, I think, was the one to open up China. He flew over there and had a big PR thing. He was known for that, if I'm not mistaken,
Okay.
of beginning to open up China's isolationism. But you're right; it was still dragging on for decades. That's interesting. So, real quick, I saw a post that I wanted to bring up, and I wanted your opinion on it. Brian, actually, who jumped in a moment ago, where's it at? I don't even have it up right now, but he made a prediction, or he quoted two separate predictions. One was how often we're quoting the 5,000 mark for Bitcoin, and Jarrett's here, so he'll be able to text in as well. But then he quoted Tim Draper's comment that Tim Draper called Bitcoin at 250K in 2022. Didn't happen, but he posted again December 31st, Tim Draper, and said, I was off a little bit, but I still believe it's happening before the halvening. That's a wide range, as Brian Naughton posted about the range of 5 to 8,000 Bitcoin to 250,000 Bitcoin. Do we believe that's going to happen? Do you believe? I know that we're going to see a dip, but do you believe in this year, if you were making a prediction, that you're going to see even their last high, let alone a six-figure bump on Bitcoin?
I can't see it. I mean, granted, like look at how far Bitcoin has come,
Yeah.
right? It still hasn't gotten to 100. So we're talking about it basically growing at twice the rate that it was prior.
Mm,
And then the last bull run is going to go twice as fast as it did this
hmm
year. Like maybe that's possible, but can you even imagine what's the economic situation that would allow for Bitcoin to grow twice as fast?
Twice as fast. So you're talking about a pace, and that's a great question. In Bitcoin's last rallies, and we're remiss we don't have Jarrett. Jarrett jumps in and says Draper's being overly bullish, and he says this quasi sarcastically, I guess. And Tim Draper knows he's being a fanboy of Bitcoin. He
Mhm.
knows he's trying to be his own market maker. And so if he rattles the horn or blows the horn loud enough, he's hoping to move that. Jarrett says he'd be surprised if it cracked 50K. Does that mean you think it will, Jarrett? I'd love to hear from you on that. But Jay, you made this comment of pace twice as fast. So are you saying like for it to go from where it's at to 50K or 5K to 50K, that pace in a year is faster than it's ever made that jump before? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, exactly. So like the
Mm,
the the rate at which the average, maybe whether it's average individual or an average corporate entity is putting
mm-hmm.
money into the Bitcoin system.
Mm,
If you were doing 50,000, if you're a company, you're doing 50,000 per month last year, you're going to do 100,000 per month this year. I
mm.
I don't see where the economics add up that give you the incentive to do that.
That makes a good point. I want to circle back to that real quick. I don't know what the economics are. Real quick, Jarrett says, I don't think it'll crack 50K. And for those who don't recall, Jarrett's our in-house maxi who stays close on Bitcoin. He doesn't think it'll hit 50K this year. But I think I speak for Jarrett, and he'll correct me in the comments. He does believe it'll at least hit its high before the halving. And that is spring 2024, if I'm not mistaken. So it will have to rally beyond 50K in that time frame. He also then says 5,000 seems low, but if Coinbase stock bottoms out and it gets sold, like Coinbase gets sold, if Gemini fails and the Fed continues to raise rates, a supply chain continues to shake, the Ukraine invasion continues, though there's positive noises about that. Energy crisis and unemployment grows, anything is possible. I agree. 5,000 does seem low. I haven't even thought about Coinbase bottoming out so low it gets sold. Who would buy Coinbase? Have you thought about that,
BlackRock,
Jay?
BlackRock, like
They don't
immediately.
already own it?
They own a bunch of it, but I mean they just buy it outright. Or there's this company that's called. It probably won't get bought, but you made me think of this. There's this company that's called T0. It's an exchange. It's a centralized exchange, and it's owned by the New York Stock Exchange. So I'm thinking, like, yeah,
Why
if
is this the first I've ever heard of this? The New York Stock Exchange is this the only centralized exchange they own?
they own some of it, I don't think they own all of it, but it's the only one that I've heard of.
But you think they have the juice, you think they have the reserves or the capital to buy
Yeah,
a bottomed out Coinbase.
I think it's centralized exchanges won't die in 2023. They'll still be around. And the reason why I think that's because I don't know if you saw this news article where the Fed came out and said to banks that if you have exposure into decentralized exchanges, that's actually bad for you, which makes no sense at all because only centralized exchanges have crashed so
Yes.
so
Yeah.
far. There's been no
Yeah.
issues with decentralized exchanges, but the Fed has come out and said that decentralized exchanges
Yeah.
are where banks should not be, meaning that if you're going to be in crypto, you need to be in a centralized exchange.
Mm. So, which means that they have to also be eyeing a more reliable exchange, and that might be the indicate. Like by that I mean more reliable, that which is under the purview
Hmm.
of
Yeah,
central government. So they would have to be pointing to that which is owned by something like the stock exchange.
like a New York Stock Exchange. So, and you know, like
Interesting.
you know, there are probably tons of people on Wall Street in Congress who have influence over the New York Stock Exchange, and so yeah,
Interesting.
if they also have a crypto exchange, a centralized one, you got to imagine that this one probably at least does well, right?
I
And
gotta look in it. I've never heard of it. It's called T0.
T0, like if you trade a lot, you're probably familiar with the term T plus two. So it's like
Yeah.
after the trade date, there's 2 more days, and then you get the transaction. Well, T0 is T plus zero because in crypto you finalize your transactions right away. There's no
What the
there's
crap?
no
This is the
2 days.
first I'm hearing of this. Now, are you using decentralized exchange interchangeably with the term swap, or you mean specifically like swaps, like Uniswap or Sushi Swap? Those are using interchangeable with those, or are you meaning like a category of decentralized exchanges that's not exactly a swap?
Oh, I assume that whenever people said decentralized exchanges, they were talking about things like a Uniswap or a Sushi Swap.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah, I just want to make sure we're on the same page there.
Okay.
Real quick, folks. Jared says no. He doesn't think it'll crack 50, but he does think it'll be around 40 at the time of the halving, and then will grow to 100K post halving. So I think Jay, Jared's pointed out that the halving occurs. There's a little bit of a dip, but then there seems to be a swing up, and then he says this could all change if the Fed starts to print in 2024. Yep, hard to say. If Coinbase stocks drops too low. Now, we did notice that Coinbase stock did drop to all-time lows within the last month or two, and me and my wife are considering buying up shares ourselves. I don't know if it's gone lower since then, so I should keep track of that. Is Gemini? Jarrett harkened back to if Gemini fails. Is Gemini such a big player, or is it just FUD that if Gemini fails, the FUD will be off the chain. Are they actually a major link in the chain?
I think they're a major link in the culture because Gemini was the first company that was like, hey, we're gonna go legit. We're gonna follow
Mm,
exactly what the regulators say to do. We're gonna do it by the books. Everybody's gonna be with us. So if they go under, it'll be like, yeah, everybody's gonna be like, I knew we shouldn't be following any regulations. The whole industry is gonna be like anti-regulation.
mm. Jarrett says, yes, it's just FUD and confidence in the market. Spot on, Jay. Huge culture moves. And I agree with that. I think a lot of the degens out there, or a lot of the people that felt like they were degens, when they saw the Winklevoss step in and Crypto.com and Gemini and Grayscale and all these people step in, it started to give us credibility badges. Hey, we
Hmm.
were in the trenches before. And though we like the decentralized culture, what we really want is stability through credibility. And Coinbase is showing signs. I personally don't think any of this is anything other than a recession market, and can people hold out? Can people survive and do their business? Are their business models resilient? And you're right, decentralized swaps and exchanges, from a business model perspective, they're not threatened because they have no labor, they have hardly any overhead, and it's just on-chain swaps, that are occurring, and they're getting their exchange fees. But these centralized exchanges have huge overheads, and they think they're smarter than the market, and so they have all of this leverage going on. That's a great question. How much leverage is going on with a swap or a decentralized exchange compared to centralized exchanges? And I would believe it's next to none.
It should be zero, right? And
It's
it should
near
be
like there's
it should
there's
be
liquid.
one-to-one liquidity in a DEX.
Yes, and I think you're right, but there is plenty of leverage still occurring. But it doesn't seem to be overextended leverage. To your point, it should be a one-to-one liquidity pool. If you look at like Uniswap or Sushi Swap, they Uniswap. I'm just pulling this up while I'm talking, so I'm not talking out of my butt here. There are plenty of liquidity pools and farm accounts and drips. But what I feel like has been happening with centralized exchanges is they feel like they're smart enough because they're human to create serious 10x, 11x, 12x leverage positions
Mhm.
where people get liquidated. And uh, where's
So
Victor when you need him? He would take that personally. And for those who don't know, Victor is a super regular that we see quite often here, and he does not mind degenning. But Jared says yes, as long as Victor isn't running the decks, it should be one to one. And I think you're right. I would like to see what's up with Curve and Flash loans. We didn't even get to touch on that. Have you even looked into that? You probably haven't had a minute to your name to look into when Victor was talking to us about Flash loans.
no,
Were you
I
on?
haven't.
Were
I
you on
didn't
that
look at
show? I
the
think you
time.
had to bail on that show. I think you might have been sick or something.
Maybe it
When
doesn't even
Victor
sound familiar, so I said no.
Victor comes on the show and says, "Oh, well, you can make plenty of money," and we're like, "Okay, do tell." And he said, "With flash loans." And I don't know if you've heard this term. Look it up.
Nope.
The way he described it was the flash loan, the contract. You borrow a stupid amount of money, call it $1 million, like you and me, a no doc loan to the tune of 6 and 7 figures. You get issued that money, a series of contractual smart contract things happen, and then you pay the money back immediately. And him and another gentleman, I forget the guy's name, I'm remiss, they were commenting in the space, yeah, it's totally easy, totally easy. And me and Jarrett were like, pause. They're like, low risk, high reward. I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And they were saying there's no risk because the contract pays it back immediately. And I said, there has to be some kind of risk.
What's the
And
point of it? Is what I
the
don't
point is,
understand.
you take the money out. You take the money out on the smart contract. There's a bot that does this, or smart contract rules that do this. There are platforms that deploy this, and they'll look at Curve Finance and see, look, you could make 0.5% over here in 30 seconds. So basically, it's a rapid arbitrage play, and it's surveying other pools, other swaps for, hey, listen, you bought Bitcoin here for me for 16,000. You buy $1 million of Bitcoin at 16,000. Over here, it's selling for 16,500. And in a minute, you buy here, sell here, and then pay back, and you get the arbitrage.
Oh, it's arbitrage.
But it's smart contract driven arbitrage. They're calling it flash loans. And Jarrett tries to fill in my ignorance here as I'm trying to explain it like a gorilla with crayons. Jarrett says it was like put up $1 million that make 20K in a second. I'm like, I'm not giving you $1 million to even have the chance of making 20,000. And we were totally confused by this. And so we finally pushed Victor and this other gentleman, have you done this yourself? And if it works that simply, why aren't there a billion crypto boys at $1 million driving Lambos everywhere? And we're hearing this story all the time. And they were both like, well, we've never done it, but we've been paper trading it and we're studying it. And we're like, oh, okay. But it was just my point about bringing it up at all is A, it's a point of interest. I'd love to know more if it works that way and it's that simple. I doubt it, right? But the other point was you rarely see these plays on true dexes.
This is how Alameda made its money initially, right? The exact
I
same
don't.
I'm not sure if it's a loan, but in doing the exact same thing, like buy on one exchange and trade another. I think they were buying in the US and trading in Japan.
Yeah. And the question is, yes, I have to imagine look at anyone that has collapsed on leverage, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was something that was leveraged and it got liquidated. They no longer have that cash. And then they did it with depositors' money. It wasn't one for one. They didn't do it with their own reserves. They did it with the wrong accounts. So to your point, I mean, we have to assume that's what happened, but it wasn't done with flash loans. One has to imagine it wasn't done with flash loans. One has to imagine it was just done with leverage. Well, it could have been done with flash loans, but even if it's flash loans and you borrow $1 million to pay back or to earn 20K in a second, there's got to be some downside, right? This can't work. But I have to imagine that if someone was left holding the bag, like Alameda or Three Arrows or whatever it is, that it had to be human managed and not smart contract managed, right?
Yeah.
Or not
Well,
bot managed. I mean, it's all smart contracts, I
it
guess.
seems well, if it is a flash loan, it seems like it's all managed by bots. Like it has to be
I have to imagine.
it well, just from what I'm reading, it's like it's all
Yes.
based on it's like an ecosystem for developers, because
Yeah.
basically the only way for you to have the knowledge to even pull this off is for you to be deep in the trenches and have the development knowledge to write your own code.
You know what? I'm going to ask ChatGPT to
Well,
figure.
you
Yeah,
could
man.
probably
Have you
do
been
it, yeah.
playing with that at all?
I haven't. I hear
Okay.
everyone's doing it, and I'm like, I feel left out.
Bro,
I haven't at
I
all.
ran a test. I don't have it up anymore. I ran a test. I grabbed from our conversation about the Great Depression, I grabbed the first 2 paragraphs of the Wikipedia article on the Great Depression. And I
Mhm.
asked ChatGPT, I said, rewrite this at the reading level of a 5th grader. Bro, it was on point. It
Yeah.
was nuts. It was nuts how good this thing works. And so I have a friend,
Yeah.
one of our contractors, one of our 1099 contractors, but she's an integral part of the team, Jessica Ojeda. She's our comms manager for Spark Sites. She gets on our call this morning and says, hey, my husband got on ChatGPT and is writing children's books with ChatGPT.
I love
It's
that. I
it's
love that.
nuts.
I
Why
love
do you love that?
that
I love it, but why do you
because
love it?
that that's like the epitome of passive income to me. Like there are things that you need to do and you don't know how to do them, but if you can just like write a sentence and tell a computer to do it for you and then just
Yeah.
sell that thing,
Yeah.
yo, that's incredible.
Question from Jarrett. Solana is pumping. It's around $13. It's gone as low as 8 recently. Where does it finish in 2023? Will it ever just evaporate? Biggest Solana NFT projects are leaving Solana for ETH and Polygon. Thoughts on its future? What have you seen? Can you speak to this at all?
Yeah, I was thinking about it too, and I'm wondering if it survives. Was Solana was and I'm trying to remember back to like the whole NFT craze. Solana was the chain that kept like breaking, like going down.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah,
technically centralized.
Hmm.
It's technically a centralized blockchain. Now, pros and cons. I like XRP because of its centralized components. I don't mind it. There are certain blockchains, especially those that have got to play nice with compliance, especially in DeFi, especially with traditional banking, that I'm fine with. I like Cardano because the way the architecture of Cardano is built, it has ways for its blockchain to interface with centralized technologies while keeping your own data decentralized and anonymous. Like that's been the whole theory since Charles Hoskins left Ethereum to build Cardano. Now, regarding Solana, if you look, Solana is up like 13% for the week. It's pumping right now off of the $8 low. The projects that left it, DGods and Utes,
Hmm.
bridged through Polygon to Ethereum. Sidebar, a testament to the power of Polygon, right? That you can just bridge, like it's huge. And Frank D Gods, there's another NFT that was just launched on Solana and a token that's launched on Solana called Bonk, and it's like the Shiba Inu of Solana right now.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's pumping. It's like up 20% in the last 2 days. Of course, this is going to be some altcoin, aka shitcoin. That the last one holding the bag is the liquidity
Yeah.
provider, right?
Some
Exit liquidity
shenanigans.
shenanigans. Jarrett's financial advice, and this is Jarrett's thing. Les don't buy. Bonk is blowing up. Les don't buy, unless that's an IE, but he's been using this for everything. I did not move fast enough to make. I did see Bonk at a point that now I was going to buy. That I was totally going to grab it. But to finish his thoughts, where does it finish in 2023? I don't like making like binary predictions, okay, about Solana, but myself, the largest developer community since Solana's been tanking is what? Cardano.
Is it
It's
okay?
produced even over Ethereum right now. It's commits, it's development projects, and it's live developers tracked, I think, largely through what's the service we always refer to? GitHub. Is
Mm.
Cardano far and away. Third is Ethereum. I don't think this is dog in Ethereum. I think it just means that Cardano deserves a little respect. If Solana can really fix its brand, I think
Hmm.
this might be an interesting entry point. So what Solana has going for it, it is centralized. I do think that is a plus in what it's trying to do. The NFT projects, Bonk is doing its thing, but I'm trying to think of the NFT that just launched over there. Or is it ORE? Something like that. No, Or is coming out on Cardano. Um, if Solana can get its brand together, if it can attract a solid NFT project, or if it can launch a true DApp, a real DApp, not another Magic Eden, not another swap. I mean, a true pure DApp. I think it's got something going for it. Uh, but if it does not do something quick, and any one of these other platforms has another major partnership, if Polygon announces another major partnership like with Starbucks or any one of these public partnerships,
Yeah.
I think they're just going to get crushed. And I'll tell you this, if Cardano announces a single additional partnership on the Cardano blockchain that's not an NFT, it's a legit mainstream Web2 partnership with an
Hmm.
NFT or a technology of any kind,
Yeah.
I think it will be a silent last nail in the coffin. It won't be loud, but it will solidify because developers are realizing Cardano is affordable. It's easy to work with. The developer community is generally very positive, which goes a long way. Sometimes Ethereum people can be kind of nasty to other blockchains. So that's what I'm calling there. Brian does jump in. And Brian, I gave a shout out to your article earlier. We were discussing it. I don't know when you jumped on, but we were discussing your article about 5,000 Bitcoin to 2,500 $250,000 Bitcoin. So nod to Brian Naughton. ISO ecosystem is a huge hedge. This is my biggest hedge. I think we had this discussion in a thread once, didn't we, Grant? Yes, Brian, we did. Um, I still believe in his big time ISO 20022. But I found out, Brian, and maybe you know this, these come online and go official May 2023, which I'm
Mhm.
pumped for. But the landscape is being built right now. Jarrett corrects me. It's not le, it's IE. Okay.
What
I've been
do you see
seeing
that?
I've been
Go,
seeing it
go
on
ahead.
his Twitter and everything, and I see it like, is that an L, lowercase L, or is it a capital I? I can't tell. um,
What do you think about what Pamela said about
oh, I'm
Tezos?
so sorry.
You
You
see
know
that
what?
comment?
Yeah, do you pay attention to Teslas at all? Really?
No, when she said it, I thought my first thought was, oh, is that still around?
Dude. So Pamela, thank you for bringing this up if you're still watching. Jay, I love Tezos. Several reasons for this. Number one, it's inherently French. It's a French company. People don't know this. And it was started by like a French couple who still manage the thing. It's grown beyond them, but they still manage it. There are NFTs on Tezos. In fact, I think Doja Cat launched her NFTs, her original NFT line on Tezos. It's
Yeah.
affordable blockchain, easy to develop on because I think it's written in like Rust and C Sharp or something like this. From a coding language, it's easy to
Yeah.
work on. Their developer community is not large, but they're committed. Here's the thing. I have not seen the marketing on Tezos announce any real partnerships since Doja Cat. That was a big one. And that was like middle of the year, I think.
Hmm.
But as a token, I'm earning everywhere at least 4%. I think it's 4%. I might be off. The payout is daily compounding. So Coinbase, if you hold Tezos on Coinbase, it
Yeah.
just compounds daily. Like I'm pretty sure it was like DAI coin, DAI coin. It's
Hmm.
just it compounds daily. You get it, and it's pennies, but when you're holding there, it's good. It's a fast blockchain. Like if I do transfers, they're relatively instant. Pamela, what I want to see on Tezos, I really want to see the marketing and comms team really make some solid announcements because Tezos, to me, is up there with Cardano, but I just don't hear much out of them. And I want social cues that they're attracting a lot of good talent. I'm not sure what she's referring to. Wow, yes. Um, she also says Arthur and Kathleen. She also says, yes, she did. I'm not really sure what you're referring to there. Um,
Yeah, the Manchester United deal, I saw that. Um,
Oh, Doja Cat. She's referring. I'm sorry. She was referring to Doja Cat and Manchester. You're absolutely right, Pamela. I am remiss. There was several football clubs and Manchester United being the big one there. So they did do some announcements. Granted, they did do some announcements. I think they could just do so much more. And their NFT um, platform is fantastic. It's like underplayed. It's downplayed. It's an easy to publish and mint your own NFTs there. Jarrett says, Pamela, beware of anything whose main utility is daily compounding or draw. Is leave it on a centralized exchange or SEX so it can drive rewards. I don't know. Like, I'd like to know. Well, first off, I don't think Tezos' main utility is daily compounding. That's just been a secondary appeal that I like. I would say that as a blockchain for NFTs, it's been an easy platform to do NFTs on. It has done some notable people. Oh, object and FX hash. Interesting. I'll have to see that. I think she's referring to the coding language. I wonder if it's changed. Maybe I'm mistaken who's doing Rust. So Pamela's stepping in. Pamela apparently is a knowledgeable fangirl.
yeah, I'm like, okay, Pamela, like,
Pamela, we're gonna have to bring you up and you tell us. Why don't you tell us about Tezos? We should actually do a whole interview where we just talk. And I'd be very open. Pamela, if you're open to this, I would either bring you on Not Crypto Bros or some other show or even a one-off interview because I do want to learn more. And you apparently are very knowledgeable and a fangirl. And I have my holdings. In fact, if you look at my Twitter, I posted my portfolio and my percentage holdings. And I think Tezos is in my top 5 holdings right now,
cool.
just because I've been holding it for a long time. It got there because I sold a lot of my Cardano. A lot. I was like 60% maxi on Cardano. I sold a lot of it before the market tanked, moved it into other things. So Pamela, she's saying brilliant. Please DM me and we'll just get on a call. And I'd love to just interview you and talk through it because I want to know more about Tezos and its future.
Yes.
But in summary, and for those who are just now catching in, Pamela's brought up a lot of great points about the blockchain Tezos. I'm holding a lot of it. There's a lot of good reasons. My only critique is that I don't think they do well enough of a job of being in my face and telling me what they're up to. Jarrett says, I own no Tezos, Cardano, or Solana. This is either good or bad. And for those who don't know, Jarrett's been consistent with saying he is a Bitcoin maxi. He does hold a spattering of other things, including Ethereum. He holds no Tezos, Cardano, or Solana. I hold a little bit of Solana. Do you hold any of these?
No, I
None.
think I had some of the bridged Solana at one point. I don't think I have any more of it, though.
I hold a fraction of Solana. I hold a good chunk of Cardano that's being staked in a liquidity in some pools on Yoroi. Fantastic. I do hold Tezos. But to Jared's credit, and just circling back, Jared has announced that his dollar cost averaging strategy started early last year, May, I think it was last year, that he put it on hold because he's living his convictions. He thinks the market is going down even further, and he's conserving his capital to go in heavy when it does make that downward play. Let me ask you, Jay, we notoriously make fun of you because you invest in yourself, but over time you have pointed out that you have more holdings than you give give credit to. So you don't even have to reveal what it is, but are you holding some cryptos right now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For sure.
Definitely. And are you doing any sort of dollar cost averaging at the moment, or are you in a holding pattern?
Yeah, I'm just holding. I do a lot of technical analysis, so I sort of wait until I start hearing things like from a narrative perspective that,
A narrative.
a
So you're doing
particular coin.
TA, but also comparing the narrative to your technical
Yeah, it's
analysis.
TA that's based on the narrative. So first, you got to have a good narrative. Like people have to
Mhm.
believe in this thing, and then you
Yeah.
start looking at the chats.
What's your major indicators on your technical analysis that you tend to trust? Don't give away your secret sauce, but I mean, TA people are like that. Like, I've got a formula, bitch. Leave me alone. But well, generally, what are your favorite indicators in general?
A lot of it is like, I might look at things like volatility, or like draw some Fibonacci curves and see where that's going. But I think a lot of it has to do with volume. If you see the
Yeah.
volume going
Yeah.
up and the price is also going up, and it
Yeah.
looks like it's lined up in terms of the lines that you've drawn,
Mhm.
that's a good bet.
I really like the RSI indicator myself. I also like the indicators about oversold or overbought and comparing that against volume. And then I look at a narrative and go, okay, where is the news? And if it's oversold and the news is pumping and the volume is starting to pick up, I might buy in, but I generally have avoided that because that starts to trigger the gambler in me. And I prefer staying with, no matter what's going on, to stay with my dollar cost averaging
Yeah.
technique because it just gets my emotion out of my head.
And
Pamela says she holds Tethos, ETH, and Matic as dropped NFT project on Polygon. I'd like to know what that means. You have your own project on Polygon. I'd love to know more about that. Um, I own Polygon NFTs. I own ETH NFTs. And then again, look at my Twitter. I posted my recent portfolio mix as percentages there. Jay,
you
this is
mentioned something. Oh, sorry. Was that kind of?
Jarrett is being facetious. With that, Jay has 100 BTC on his keychain ledger. He's being facetious. Jay, give me your thought there, and then let's do some shout outs. What's your thought there?
Oh, shoot. I think I forgot the thought. You know
It's a,
what's
oh,
something that I've been thinking about lately?
hmm,
Back like in the early days of Bitcoin, like
hmm.
early days, I turned my computer into like I started mining with one of my computers.
Hmm.
I have no idea which computer it is or where it is, or I've been thinking about that. Like, oh man, I wish I had kept track of
Yeah.
that hard drive.
So let me tell you something. I have a bag of old tech, and it's old laptops and old
Mhm.
desktops. And I did this originally because in the Napster days, I had external hard drives of like my 10,000 song Napster collection and the original Lord of the Rings, right? Like all downloaded on Napster back in the day. And I started keeping my hard drives somewhere in that. And that's like 20 years of hard drives. And it's in like a storage unit. And in there are like my last four laptops, one of which was a hash miner.
Hmm.
And I think I've been pretty thorough.
about keeping my balances forward. But there is like a 5% troll in me that thinks, do I have any hidden Bitcoin mind, mother effer? And I don't want to go there yet, you know? So I'll start shout outs. You wrap shout outs and then I'll wrap the show. While to give you a second to think about shout outs. My shout outs are to everyone today chiming in. My shout out is to Jarrett. Please get better, my friend. My shout out is to Pamela's passion for Tezos and challenging me, my knowledge on that. So Pamela, DM me, we'll get on a show. And my challenge is for the holidays and the New Year's and for anyone out there who's setting big goals. Even though the world might poo-poo you setting goals, I believe in you. Jay, what's your shout out?
Man, you know what I've been thinking about a lot this last week? Elon Musk. I'm like, man,
Okay.
that dude is having how do you get in so much trouble when you're like the richest, most powerful person in the world?
He's in trouble too.
Jeez. What's up,
I don't.
Allison? We haven't seen Allison in so long. What's up, Allison?
Yeah, Allison, we miss your face. I've been following your Twitter account though, and I love watching your Twitter account. You're right, Elon. I don't think he's in trouble, but he's getting into so much trouble,
Mhm.
that I'm like, bro, cool your jets. I'm down with you. I'm down with everything you're doing. I really am. I'm down with how you're managing things, but like, cool your jets. So is that your shout out?
That's my shout out to him, man. I hope he gets it together for 2023. Hopefully he figures out how to get that Tesla stock price back up to where it was. People stop being upset with
Oh,
him
he
for this,
will. I'm,
this
I'm
Twitter
I mean,
purchase.
Kathy Woods is buying up Tesla right now. And
Oh, okay.
I'm about to start buying up Tesla. Me and Marissa are we're almost at a recession point for our thresholds when we start buying stuff up and like finding change in the couch to buy up every stock that we believe in, every dividend stock, every crypto we believe in. We're just dumping it into these markets. And Pamela was sharing a little bit about her NFT drop. Pamela, I commit to you that in our interview, we'll talk more about that. And Jarrett, did you have a Tesla and coin will be bought soon? Yeah, Tesla and coin will be bought soon. Everyone, thank you so much for stopping in today. We're going to wrap it up this afternoon. I'm sure we could riff all day long about what people are buying in the new year, what to expect in the new year. Find Not Crypto Bros on YouTube. Find us on Twitter. We go live on LinkedIn. We're no longer doing Saturdays for now. We're reformatting that format of content, but you can always find us here Tuesdays at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, wherever you're at. Thanks so much. Have a great day, everybody.